Hello everybody, Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. It's Thursday's edition, and we're broadcasting from Southern California and from Long Island, New York. Jeffrey, welcome back. Happy to have you back with me today.
Thank you, and it's my first Thursday in a couple of weeks.
It is, that's right. We've been adjusting the schedule to accommodate you this week. So, well, actually for the last couple of weeks. Did you have a nice holiday over Thanksgiving?
I had a great Thanksgiving. I didn't go out and buy on Black Friday.
Okay.
Which was great because I could stay home and not get angry.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I didn't do anything for Cyber Monday.
You know, I'm in the same camp as you. I didn't either. I mean, they just sort of days on the calendar and they just went by and then, there you have it.
But on Saturday, I did something very important. I slept until 4 p.m.
Oh, wow. Yeah, okay. All right. With sleeping till 4, that's sort of what we could talk about Washington, D.C. But no, Jeffrey, they're having budget battles in D.C. And let's sort of break it down for our viewers and listeners out there. The Republicans, who just won back the House, they're by 10 seats, are saying, wait a minute. We don't want to have the Democrats control the agenda on spending for the next year. That's going to deprive the voters who elected Republicans to the House. And yet, the Senate is considering what I call this ominous spending bill where they load everything in, and that'll be the spending bill for the bulk of 2023. Jeffrey, a lot of Republican senators are pushing back on this. Yeah, they've come up and they said, well, we're going to increase defense spending. I mean, that's the carrot to the Republicans. We're going to give you an extra $45 billion in defense spending, bring it up to $847 billion, a record next year. Jeffrey, what do you say about what's going on here with this budget stuff?
You ever notice, though, that when somebody has something that they think people would object to, they say, well, I'm doing it for the people?
Always.
When they're really doing it for the people they think who are going to vote for them?
Or donate money to their campaign.
I mean, but when you look at it, we had the... what we have? We had the student loan, which is going to be overturned by the court.
Right.
Things like that. It was done just to get votes.
Oh, everything they do was done for that. I mean, they don't have any scruples about that. They tried to buy young people's votes, and they were successful at it. Let's call it what it was. Even though the courts had put a kibosh on this, the Biden administration, they've extended the student loan, deferred payments until June under the guise of COVID, when everybody in the world knows it's a $5 billion a month handout.
Yep.
It's inflationary, but again, they did it. They tried to buy votes. They were successful at it. And now the policies, just today, Jeffrey, it was overturned by the three-judge panel of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Biden will appeal it to Supreme Court and he'll lose. So at the end of the day, this debacle will end in June when people have to start making payments again starting July. But again, the damage that Biden's doing to this country by this action, there's two things there: budgets and student loans. You could talk an hour on them.
Well, but just as the Democrats are trying to rush everything through before January, when they lose the control of the House, the Republicans are trying to delay it until January when they have control.
Well, and what the Democrats are basically threatening them with right now is, okay, we'll pass a short-term spending gap identical to last year's budget, which was already bloated with a lot of the Democratic priorities in it. Or, if you don't accept that, we're going to vote this ominous package where we throw a lot of stuff into it. Two bad choices. And frankly, I think the Republicans just need to vote against all this stuff. In the Senate, wait until, do a short-term funding piece to keep the government open, and then have the debate in January when we have a Republican House and, a Democratic Senate.
I agree.
Yeah.
But that's not the way it's going to work.
No, I don't think that's the way it's going to work either.
It's hard to beat Nancy Pelosi on anything.
Well, one thing the Democrats do way better than our side, Jeffrey, they stick together. They have ideological factions within the party. You have what not many of them left, but the old blue dog Democrats, which were considered conservative to moderate Democrats. Then you have your traditional liberal Democrats. Then you have your far left wingers, and then to the left of them you have the squad, the ultimate progressives. Somehow Pelosi was able to, tie them all together and get stuff passed. On our side, on our side,
fundraiser, and you don't play her along, you don't get money.
Correct. And yet on our side, we got 5 dunces that are going to try to hold up the Kevin McCarthy piece on the speakership. I got to tell you, initially I had favorable opinions of most of those 5 people. But if they pull this stunt, like I'm expecting they will, in dividing our party, as far as I'm concerned, I have no use for them anymore. Because, one thing the Democrats do, Jeffrey, and our side better learn from this, they take the existing rules, sometimes they bend them, sometimes they break them, but they're basically saying, okay, our caucus is together, this is what we're going to do. And just like early voting, that's the law. They took advantage of it. We did not. Now, we're sort of dealing with the consequences.
And what people don't understand is it's the speaker who determines what gets to the floor.
Exactly.
And that's really why you want your party to be the speaker.
Of course. And plus you had all the committees. The speaker appoints people to the various committees. Listen, for us to, I got to tell you, Mark Levin used the term the other day, and let me find it in my notes, but basically, the 5 dunces or whatever, the boneheads is what he called them. We got to stop this nonsense. You can negotiate for different changes, that's fine. But ultimately, when that vote happens, it needs to be solid behind McCarthy. But back to the spending bill, how do you see this? Because, the Democrats in control of the Senate have agreed to increase defense spending $45 billion. And yet
we need that $45 billion. That's one of the problems. Yesterday, I heard that China's trying to triple the number of nukes by 2030. And China's ramping up their army. We have Russia fighting Ukraine, and we know their army's been a joke, but they have a part that isn't a joke.
Yeah.
So we need to have a solid army. And our problem isn't the rank and file. Our problem is the leadership. Like you have, what's his name? General Milley, who made everything that you have to be woke, that everybody has to get classes on race relations and gender relations. And it's like, no, have classes on how do you beat the other guys?
Right. We've had a military for a long time in this country, didn't have any of that garbage in there. And now they're trying to stick it down the military's throat. I can't stand that crap. It's just ridiculous that they have to deal with that. But my point was, again, they have increased the defense budget $45 billion. Now, the offset to that is always the case, is Democrats, when you increase military spending, they want to increase domestic spending. And here we're with a $1 trillion deficit. And the sum total of the debt, Biden's grew the debt in just 2 years, $4 trillion in 2 years. Jeffrey, it's just the borrow and spend just goes on and on and on. And we've been warned for decades that we're going to reach a tipping point, and I fear we're very close to that tipping point.
Well, but you got to give him some credit. They say Biden got nothing done. He set a record for overspending.
Yeah, of course he did.
So he should get a medal for that. And you're right, we're coming close to the debt bomb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's out there for sure.
And that's when we can't even pay our interest.
Well, we're a far cry from that, but just examples of what we talk about. The military budget, increasing defense budget, the student loan deferment fiasco piece. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said in his testimony yesterday they're going to slow the rate of increases in interest rates. They'll raise them 50 basis points in December, and then probably 25 to 50 in this ensuing two next couple meetings. But they're going to get to a point where rates will be high enough to choke off inflation, which is starting to come down. The market read it as a free-for-all yesterday and really zoomed higher. They're giving some of that back today. But the fact of the matter is these interest rates go up, that increases the government borrowing cost because the era of free money is over.
Yep, we're not printing money anymore, and I don't mean printing, but we're not increasing the money supply anymore.
We're actually, what's happening is the Fed's balance sheet is actually running off, meaning as securities are paid off, they're not reinvesting in them. So the balance sheet is coming down, albeit slowly.
But you know what? There are a lot of economists saying, it's not going to be bad this year, but what we've done so far is going to hit us next year.
Well, that's the general consensus. I mean, we had revised growth that came out yesterday of 2.9%. That was above the previous third quarter estimate of 2.6%. So the economy grew at 2.9% in Q3. People had jobs. It rebounded nicely. The forecast for Q4 is 1%. So a slowing. And then, look, you can't hide the fact that companies are particularly in technology, they're starting to lay off people. But it hasn't reached the macro economy. In other words, you're having technology layoffs. Okay, that's fine. But aggregately, manufacturing in this country is still pretty stable, albeit off a little bit. But you had certain sectors that are cooling, like real estate. Okay, that's to be expected because it had gone up so much with the free money. Look, consumer price index. Let's talk a little bit about that. We got a couple things here. There's a piece the Federal Reserve focuses very closely on, Jeffrey. It's called the Personal Consumption Expenditure, PCE index. In October, that was 6%. Now everybody says, well, that's pretty high. But that's down from 6.3 in September. And when it comes out for November, they're saying it might be slightly lower. The other thing which the Fed focuses on is called core PCE, and that excludes volatile food and energy prices. September it was 5.2, October 5. Jeffrey, that's still high, okay? That is still high. It's not as high as it was 3 or 4 months ago, but it's still high. And I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers, but my point is these numbers, whether you're talking the personal consumption expenditures, exclude food and energy, CPI, Consumer Price Index, 7.7 in October, it's expected to marginally decline a little bit in November. You could see a low 7 handle on it, possibly a high 6. But you still have a gap here. The Fed funds rate is not at a level even equal to the inflation rate right now. So by definition, you're still behind the 8 ball.
I mentioned Black Friday before. What I heard about Black Friday when I read about it is that people were spending more, but they were buying less stuff because everything was so much more expensive. So if they got their kids 3 presents this year, they got 2 presents because it cost more than 3 presents they got last year.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah, of course, because a lot of people are really feeling the pain from this inflation. There's no question about it. But the interesting piece is, Jeffrey, credit card balances continue to go up. At a certain point, I don't know what time that point is, but you reach a point where you just can't keep borrowing and borrowing to maintain that lifestyle. People, let me ask you a question. I've been hearing anecdotal stories, and I saw some articles online about what's happening in Connecticut and the Northeast. A lot of people are having trouble paying their utility bills because of home heating oil costs are really skyrocketing. There's government handouts going on to help people pay their home heating oil bill because home heating oil is obviously the main source of energy in a lot of Northeast cities. What's going on with that?
Well, my area hasn't had the big freeze yet. Mm-hmm. So it's not that much with the heating oil. However, last week Buffalo had 6 feet of snow. I'm sure it needed more heating oil. But what they're doing in some areas of New York is they're giving free solar panels for those who switch over to electric, sun heat. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So they're trying to do it that way, solar heat. But people are going to this is going to increase people's anger at the government. Yeah.
Well, again, you have a situation here where when you cramp supplies and demand goes up, prices are going to go up. You know, Joe Visconti's guest on our show, he's talked about it in Connecticut, and boy, I got to tell you, feel for him, but this is entirely predictable was going to happen. But again, I look at it like this. They continue to vote for Democrats in these deep blue states, so they're going to get what they want. I mean, it's just amazing to me.
I think some of it was what we were doing. You know, our senator, former governor from Florida, was going around saying, well, of course we're going to mess with Social Security and Medicare.
Oh, yeah, right.
And that gave him a talking point.
Yeah, that didn't go over too well. Speaking of politics now, Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker heading to a December 6th vote. Okay, that's going to be coming up this, Tuesday? Yeah, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yeah, Tuesday, this coming Tuesday. Some polling has Warnock ahead 51-49. Others have it a little closer than that. Jeffrey, this is an important seat, and the way the Democrats are framing it right now, it's really important for us to retain this seat because in 2024, they've got a brutal map of probably 8 red states, red to purple states, that they have to defend, and Republicans are in a much more favorable map in 2024.
I don't see Walker winning. I'm surprised it went this far.
Really? Why? Why is that?
Because they like Warnock. I mean, Warnock is an absolutely lousy candidate. Okay, he's very liberal.
Extremely.
Okay. He hates everybody, including the military. You know, he hates the country. This is just quoting his stuff. But for some reason, the people in Georgia love it.
Well, it's race-based identity politics at its worst. And look.
But they're both black.
That's not my point. One is conservative and one is a radical liberal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my point is a lot of people the Democratic Party is, they're more advanced than we are in the race-based politics, that's for sure. But look, early voting has shattered records again in Georgia. And where I have
those laws made voting very hard, so many people didn't vote.
Look, I think the race is a toss-up. It could go either way. I saw some polling, earlier that showed the race in a tie. I mean, it's very close. I mean, it's going to be within a point because it was that tight previously. So, but when I hear a disturbing thing, I'm looking at this, and some clown up in Georgia, who's the outgoing lieutenant governor, didn't run for re-election, said he didn't vote for either one of them. I'm saying, what a dunce. I mean, come on. You're the acting lieutenant governor, and you say you have a problem voting, for the Republican candidate. The guy shouldn't even be in the damn Republican Party if that's the case. I mean, I don't know. I don't even want to say his name because it would give him, more publicity, but that's ridiculous.
The guy should keep his mouth shut. It's his business who he votes for.
That's right.
And when he says who he votes for, it becomes our business.
Right. And that's exactly right. I'm with you 100%. Contrast. Now let's contrast a couple things here. And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. The Democratic Party just announced new leadership. Hakeem Jeffries, a liberal not far from you in New York, became the head of the majority leader of the Democratic Party, along with his number 2 and number 3. The Democrats, without any issues, nothing, they've got new leadership.
Jeffries makes Pelosi look like a conservative.
I know that. He is a leftist for sure, no doubt about it, as is his leadership team. I get it. But the only one that can even consider challenging him was Adam Schiff of California. He quickly realized he didn't have the votes and he didn't go there. And so basically, you've got a more liberal, left-wing Democratic leadership. But my point was, they did it with basically very minimal fanfare. Pelosi announced, okay, I'll stay in the House, but I'm not going to run. Steny Hoyer could have got it. No, he said no. Jim Clyburn was number 3. He's now number 4. He wanted to stay in leadership, but agreed to abdicate his spot. It was basically a seamless process. Us, on the other hand, we got these fine dimwits that are trying to hold up the situation with McCarthy. It just illustrates the need. The Democrats, again, we oppose them, but you have to admit, politically speaking, they've sort of figured it out, Jeffrey, on the leadership piece here, whether we agree with it or not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They know how to do it. They know how to manage a caucus.
Yeah.
And the Republicans don't. And it's always been that way.
Well, I don't know if it's always been that way, but it certainly is right now, for sure.
But in the last 12 years, it's been that way.
Yeah. How do you see it going? You think McCarthy eventually gets the votes to be Speaker?
Yeah.
I do too. I think that's going to happen. Yeah.
If it doesn't happen, it's really stupid. Because I think he'll be a good Speaker.
I think McCarthy will be an excellent Speaker. I like him a lot. He's sharp, raised a lot of money. Did some good things. I look at it not as a one-term thing. I'm saying, okay, what happened in 2020? Well, we picked up 14 seats. Okay, what about 2022? Well, we only picked up 10, but we're in a majority, 220. Well, now with the one congressman dying, 222 to 212. So we have a 10-seat majority. That's 5 more than the Democrats had. So I don't want to hear these excuses. Well, it's a really tight house, and Pelosi managed to do it with a margin of 5. McCarthy, assuming he gets the speakership, will now have a margin of 10. So there is some open field running if the Republicans will stick together. If they fraction off, then we're going to have a little problem here.
Plus, if we have a good presidential candidate, McCarthy will make sure he or she has coattails.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm with you on that. And with the map in the Senate in 2024, that's going to look pretty good. But again, it's going to depend on policies and what happens. One other point that I want to cover before I get in a couple things with you here. Do you see where the European Union, Jeffrey, has announced that they have going to form a special court to prosecute these Russian war crimes? Every day these stories are coming out about horrific things the Russians did to the Ukrainian people, from rape to torture to murder. It is just terrible, these war crimes committed by the Russians.
Yep. And our country has been relatively silent about it. Every once in a while, Biden will say war crimes, and then he'll go on to the next topic. He doesn't make anything a big issue.
No, he doesn't. And the only thing you can think of, we've given Ukraine billions of dollars of defensive weapons and anti-missile. We got a lot. We've done a yeoman's job on that point, but we haven't given them weapons that could extend the war into Russia. So it's like they have to sit here and take all this, and the Russians don't. Well, again, the Russians are losing countless men and equipment. Don't even want to get into that right now, but the losses have been horrific. And you're heading into the winter season. You've seen the stories as well as I have. These Russian troops just dying in these bunkers, just freezing to death. So it's going to be long and drawn out, and there's no easy fixes to it. And this is going to go on, Jeffrey, probably for a while.
Well, if you look at it, go back to Napoleon. He lost because of Russian winters. Hitler lost against Russia because of Russian winters. So it depends how it goes. At least Ukraine should be used to those winters because they have them too.
Yeah, sure. Well, Ukraine's fighting for their territory, and that's
right.
that's the big difference here. That's the big difference. This crypto thing, Jeffrey. Every day something worse happens with this. This guy, FTX and Bankman-Fried, this was nothing more than a Ponzi scheme. And it gets worse every day. Not only have a million people lost, they're going to lose all their money who had it in there, but investigators are finding they simply took in money and shifted it among different companies. Supposedly, Bankman-Fried gets on an interview. Why the hell a major network like CNBC would even grant that interview? I'm sort of shocked by that, but they did. And, Bankman-Fried's basically saying, oh, I didn't try to defraud anyone. I didn't do this. Yeah, well, billions are missing. And it's crystal clear to me they commingled
Maybe it's in his other pocket.
Yeah.
I have had a lot of friends trying to convince me to go into the crypto market, and not all of them are like him. Not all of them, most of them aren't thieves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I just don't want to get into something where there's nothing backing it up.
Nothing. Nope.
I
Nope.
buy real estate. I know I have a piece of grass somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
I buy stock. Well, I know I own a part of a company.
Mm-hmm.
I buy crypto. I have a nice coin.
You think you have nice coin. You have no
Well,
idea what you have. Yeah, because they were creating so many coins, leveraging them up, borrowing money against it was Jeffrey, it was a classic Ponzi scheme. It's coming home to roost. We haven't even seen the extent of the fallout. The contagion's going to continue. You think things are bad now, they're going to get worse. And as more of this is exposed, other firms, here's the thing the bankruptcy judges haven't determined, do they even want to name the creditors? Because they're feared that if they name the creditors will receive runs. So, I mean, this thing's collapsing. It will collapse in front of us. And to me, I couldn't care less. I've said this entire thing was a Ponzi scheme from the beginning. I stand by it. And so far, I've been proven right. And
well, if you remember what happened when the housing market collapsed, when they did name the creditors, they didn't name the investors,
mm-hmm.
and they got in big trouble, the investors, and they're going to have to eventually
yeah.
find out who the creditors are.
Yeah,
who
yeah.
gave them money.
Yeah, it'll come out. All right, we got a couple minutes left. And I want to sort of turn it over to you on this one because this week marked the 75th anniversary, Jeffrey, of the UN resolution approving a separate Jewish state. Now, a lot of people think that it was a UN resolution approving Israel as a state. Explain to our audience a little bit of the history dating to 1947 and what really the UN did and where we are today.
Well, before 1948, Palestine meant a Jewish state and an Arab state because they both lived in that area. Okay, so, and there was never a Palestinian state. It was the Romans, and then there was this general named Bar Kokhba who thought he was the Messiah, go against Rome and lose. And the Romans said, wait, this is the third time in less than 100 years you attacked us. We're taking away your country. We're going to rename it to Palestine. And the reason why they named it Palestine is after the Philistines, who hadn't been around for 1,000 years.
Right.
And there were different people who owned that land, but there were always Jews there. Okay. And for almost 2,000 years, Jews have been praying to get that land back. Mm-hmm. And in 1948, they appointed a commission to see what they could do. And what they did is they created a Jewish state and a Palestinian state out of that land. Mm-hmm. They also created Jordan out of that land. So it was kind of like more, and the Jews were happy. We got some land. The Palestinians and the Arab League started attacking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They didn't recognize it, did they?
Many of them, Saudi still doesn't. Iraq and Iran still doesn't. But Israel has more of a relationship with the Sunni states than the Shia states.
Mm-hmm. Of course. Yeah.
Okay. But it's interesting because they stayed, the people who lived in that land stayed there for 1,900 years, really, and always fought to stay in their land. Mm-hmm. And really, people say bad things about Zionism. Do you know what Zionism means? Zionism means a homeland for Jewish people in the Holy Land. It doesn't mean hate this one, hate that one.
Right.
It means we want to find out this is our internal homeland. We want to live there.
Well, it separated the two. It separated two separate states, but it wasn't. They didn't exactly approve the state of Israel. But that's wrong. Well,
they declared independence a year later.
Yeah, right.
And the funny thing is they came up so many different ways to name it. Yeah. I mean, one of the things was Judea, which was the ancient name of the state. But some of them, and I don't remember any of them off the top of my head, were really wacko. Mm-hmm. But that's what happens when you go. And in 1948, they declared independence, and they came up with a almost a Declaration of Independence. It wasn't a constitution.
Right.
But part of that said they have to be nice to all people, that everyone should have this, be allowed in the government. And what I find interesting, when you hear some of the critics say, well, Israel is an apartheid state. Israel had an Arab member of the government, okay, in the cabinet.
Right.
Jews don't get to vote in some places.
Yeah, I know. It's a complete misnomer. That's correct.
So, but it developed into one of the most important countries in the world in terms of helping the United States with counterterrorism. They've made great medical advances that people don't know about.
Technology advances. I mean, it's security advances.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of things that the state of Israel has done, which has been good for the globe. I just wanted to bring that up, Jeffrey, because it was 75 years. What do they call it? The diamond anniversary or something? Silver? It's 75. It's an important milestone.
Yeah. It's a big holiday in Israel, but for people like me, it's a big holiday because it was able to return to our homeland after 2,000 years. Yeah. And then there are people like me. I'm an American. I'll always live here. I love this country. Okay. But Israel is my home.
Yeah. Understood and respected.
All
right, you got 30 seconds left. Close it out. I always ask you, where do we go from here? What's going to happen in the coming weeks? Give me your prognostication on going forward here in the U.S.
I would keep your eyes on the Republican leadership in the House to see what happens. Because you hear this one a little, that one a little. Tomorrow, we get the unemployment results.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that coming on. And, those, I think, are the two big things next week.
Yeah, I concur with you on that. And the unemployment number hasn't received a lot of attention because of the Fed speak yesterday with, Fed Chairman Powell talking. But, we have low unemployment in this country. It is still difficult to hire workers. And Jeffrey, I'll say this. If that unemployment number stays low or good news, bad news, if it ticks down, Wall Street may not react so favorably to that because then that's an indication interest rates may have to stay higher for longer. And a lot of people on Wall Street are betting at a certain point the Fed will have to cut rates. I do not see that in the cards right now, despite...
When they do the first people who filed for unemployment, those numbers went up.
Slightly. Yeah.
They've been going down.
Yeah, slight increase, still in the mid 200s. But, that's a big deal tomorrow. And I agree with your piece, too. We need to see the commentary, what comes out. And the other thing I think is important besides, the election in the House, the unemployment number, what does the Senate do with this funding bill? The Democrats are going to pass whatever Schumer recommends they pass. And Schumer and Pelosi will talk about that. But will the Republicans go along with the Democrats again? Or will they stand up and say, no, short-term funding only? I think those three things are I think, the key to watch, and we'll talk about those next Thursday.
I think McConnell has more control of the Senate than any Republican has of the House.
No question about it. Not even a debatable thing.
The other thing I would watch for, I forgot, is the riots going on in China, in Iraq, and some of those horrible repressive regimes. Let's see what happens with them.
Well, and then, of course, for you, the most important thing is how will Mike White do at Minnesota as quarterback of the New York Jets?
Yeah, that's like he played such a great game. Let's see it two weeks in a row.
And he's from where I went to college, Western Kentucky University.
They asked me to do quarterback, but because I was still, recovering from my back, I couldn't do it.
You couldn't do it. All right.
I couldn't throw a ball more than 5 yards.
Folks, we'll be back next week on Monday. We'll cover all the issues Jeffrey and I talked about. Have a great weekend coming up. Jeff, thanks again. See you next Thursday. Folks, we will see you on Monday. Have a good weekend.